Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Nawreen. In today's bulletin, we will present top and trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. House debt ceiling vote to avert default on track with Biden and McCarthy both confident of passage. DeSantis plays up his personal side and swipes at Trump in campaign bleeds across Iowa. Biden approves a new $300 million military aid package for Ukraine. Iowa apartment collapse leaves residents missing, rubble too dangerous to search. Texas governor appoints John Scott as interim attorney general after Paxton impeached. Oklahoma High Court strikes down 2 abortion bans. Procedure remains illegal in most cases. Shooting in Lebanon kills 3, including 2 children, owns 4th person. Alex Murdaugh pleads not guilty for now to federal war fraud and money laundering charges. Little Amal, a 12-foot puppet of a Syrian refugee, will travel the US. Real-life Fast and Furious car sent flying over tow truck in Georgia, video shows. At 83, Al Pacino is expecting a baby with 29-year-old Noor Al-Fallah. Saudi US astronauts splash down on return from a space station. Sweden close to becoming first smoke-free country in Europe as daily use of cigarettes dwindles. Provocative, dangerous, China blames US for air confrontation. Sabalenka powers into French Open third round. And Alcaraz overcomes Obel to reach French Open last 32. You were listening to Headlines, now news in detail. Crossing a crucial hurdle, the debt ceiling and budget cuts package to avert default headed toward House passage late Wednesday as President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy assembled a coalition of centrist Democrats and Republicans against fierce conservative blowback and progressive dissent. Tensions rose during an afternoon procedural vote when heavy Republican support lagged, but the package ultimately sailed to approval once Democrats unleashed favorable votes in a show of bipartisan support. Onlookers filled the visitor galleries. The vote was 241-187 to proceed toward final approval. As debate began, Biden expressed optimism that the agreement he negotiated with McCarthy would pass the chamber and avoid an economically disastrous default on America's debts. "I think things are going as planned," he told reporters. "God willing, by the time I land, Congress will have acted, the House will have acted, and we will be one step closer," Biden said. Biden sent top White House officials to the Capitol to shore up backing. McCarthy worked to sell skeptical fellow Republicans, even feinting off challenges to his leadership in the rush to avert a potentially disastrous U.S. default. Ron DeSantis was making a 4-stop blitz through Iowa during his first full day of presidential campaigning on Wednesday. aiming for a personal connection with voters while intensifying his criticism of former President Donald Trump. The Florida governor's first appearance was the floor of Port Neal Welding in Salix, a rural town near Sioux City, in the heart of the most Republican-heavy part of the state. Lining the highway outside the welding shop were metal structures, including a towering Jesus, a version of the Statue of Liberty, and the Minions. DeSantis talked up his efforts to push his state further to the right, but he often barreled through his 30-minute speech in workmanlike fashion, leaving few pauses for applause from the audience of a bit more than 100 people, some wearing caps bearing seat company logos. The governor is opening his campaign trailing Trump in the polls. He has also for months been dogged by criticism that, while he is comfortable on stage and in official settings, he can seem halting and awkward when interacting with regular voters. President Joe Biden has approved a new package of military aid for Ukraine that totals up to $300 million and includes additional munitions for drones and an array of other weapons. It comes as Russia has continued to pummel Ukraine's capital and unmanned aircraft have targeted Moscow. US officials have said there is no suggestion that US-made drones or munitions were used in the Moscow strikes, which the Kremlin blamed on Ukraine but Kiev has not acknowledged. The Biden administration has said it has made clear to Ukraine that US-made weapons should not be used for attacks inside Russian territory. We don't tell them where to strike. We don't tell them where not to strike. Ultimately, President Zelensky and his military commanders decide what they are going to do from a military perspective, White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said Wednesday. But he added that the US has been very clear with the Ukrainians privately. We have certainly been clear publicly that we do not support attacks inside Russia. He said Zelensky has given the US assurances that the Ukrainians respect those concerns. The new aid package provides munitions to boost Ukraine's air defense capabilities to fend off Russia's air assaults on Kiev. It provides munitions for Patriot missile batteries and high-mobility artillery rocket systems, as well as Avenger and Stinger air defense systems, mine-clearing equipment, anti-armor rounds, unguided Zuni aircraft rockets, night vision goggles, and about 30 million rounds of small arms ammunition and an undisclosed amount of other artillery rounds. 5 residents of a 6-story apartment building that partially collapsed in eastern Iowa remained unaccounted for Tuesday, and authorities feared at least 2 of them might be stuck inside rubble that was too dangerous to search. The 3 other missing residents are not believed to have been in the building when it started collapsing Sunday evening, said State Representative Monica Kurth. Mayor Mike Madsen confirmed at a news conference that not all the residents were accounted for. A group of protesters held signs and chanted near the building Tuesday morning, arguing the city was moving too quickly toward demolishing the 116-year-old brick and steel structure. Built as a hotel, it had more recently been used as apartments, and tenants had been allowed to remain even as bricks began falling from the building. After the partial collapse, the city had announced plans to begin demolishing the unstable remains of the structure as early as Tuesday morning, but the delayed after a woman was found Monday evening. Officials now say immediate demolition was never intended, but they did want to quickly stage the site for the tear down. The woman's rescue prompted officials to see if they could safely enter and ensure others weren't inside. But that is extremely difficult when the building could collapse at any time, they said. Governor Greg Abbott on Wednesday appointed John Scott to temporarily serve as Texas Attorney General after the House of Representatives voted to impeach Ken Paxton, a Republican, over allegations of misconduct and crimes. The historic impeachment triggered Paxton's automatic suspension from office pending the outcome of a trial in the state Senate that could result in his permanent removal. The Senate has set the trial to begin no later than August 28. Scott, an attorney, has previously worked in the Attorney General's office and recently served as Texas Secretary of State. Abbott appointed him as the state's chief elections officer in October 2021, and he served until December 2022, when he left the post before the state Senate would vote to confirm his appointment. Abbott made the announcement in a statement that did not mention Paxton by name or comment on the accusations against him. The governor has been publicly silent about Paxton since the impeachment proceedings began last week. The Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled on Wednesday that two state laws banning abortion are unconstitutional, but the procedure remains illegal in the state in nearly all cases except life-threatening situations. In a 6-3 ruling, the High Court said the two bans are unconstitutional because they require a medical emergency before a doctor can perform an abortion. The court said this language conflicts with the previous ruling it issued in March that determined the Oklahoma Constitution provides an inherent right of a pregnant woman to terminate a pregnancy when necessary to preserve her life. The court's decision was welcomed by doctors who said uncertainty about the state's abortion laws often forced them to make women facing severe medical complications and non-viable pregnancies to wait for their condition to worsen before they could perform an abortion. A shooting outside an eastern Pennsylvania home killed 3 people, 2 of them children aged 8 and 9, and wounded another person, authorities said. Chief Brett Fisher of the Lebanon Police Department said officers responded to a city residence shortly after 10 p.m. Tuesday after a report of shots fired. Mayor Sherry Capello and Fisher said Wednesday that a 19-year-old man was killed along with 2 boys, aged 8 and 9. A 33-year-old man was said to be recovering after surgery. The children are students in the Lebanon School District, Capello said. Not all of the victims are related, officials said. It appears at the early stages of this investigation that one of the victims was targeted. The other 3 victims were uninvolved, Fisher said. Other people besides the victims were also present in the home, she said. SWAT team members executed a search at a home and took someone into custody who is of interest in the case but was arrested on an unrelated matter, Fisher said. Authorities are working with the county district attorney's office, which declined immediate comment, and state police. Alex Murdaugh was arraigned Wednesday on federal money laundering and war fraud charges for indictments saying he stole money from his clients, and although he pleaded not guilty for now, his lawyer said that might change soon. Murdaugh is already serving a life sentence in a South Carolina state prison for killing his wife and son, and the details of the 22 financial charges aren't new. State prosecutors have indicted Murdaugh on similar charges, saying he diverted money meant for clients and a wrongful death settlement for his family's longtime housekeeper who fell at Murdaugh's home to his own bank accounts. Murdaugh's lawyer said in a statement last week the former attorney has been cooperating with federal investigators, and they anticipated the latest charges would be quickly resolved without a trial. A federal guilty plea to the charges that all carry at least 20 years in prison would guarantee a long time in prison for Murdaugh, even if his pending appeal of his double murder conviction was successful. Little Amal. a 12-foot puppet of a Syrian refugee, will journey across the United States this fall, visiting key places in America's history to raise awareness about immigration and migration. The puppet of the 10-year-old girl will visit the U.S. Capitol, Boston Common, Joshua Tree National Park, and the Edmund Pettus Bridge, among other sites, during a trek which starts in Boston on September 7 and ends November 5 along the US-Mexico border. There is something in the act of welcoming a stranger which redefines you, says Amir Nijar Zebi, the artistic director. I think that's part of what we are trying to create when walking into places that have a beautiful, complicated, defining history. Stops are also planned for Philadelphia, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, the Tennessee cities of Nashville and Memphis, New Orleans, the Texas cities of Austin, Houston, San Antonio, and El Paso, as well as the California cities of Los Angeles and San Diego. Obviously, there is a lot of specific points in our American history that we felt that we needed to address, and that's the reason why we are starting in Boston, says Enrico de Young Wei, lead puppeteer and co-associate artistic director. The reason why we are finishing in San Diego is that there is just such a thin line between the United States and Mexico. Little Amal demands empathy, the puppet of a vulnerable, naive girl who is in a strange place after surviving a long ordeal alone. It looks like a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster. A Satan rockets into the air after driving up the ramp of a flatbed tow truck on a Georgia highway, and the whole crash is caught on video by an officer's body camera. Shocked motorists and law enforcement watched in horror as the Nissan Altima was launched 120 feet down the highway in Lowndes County, according to police report on the May 24 crash. The driver was a 21-year-old woman from Florida, the report says. She was taken to South Georgia Medical Center with serious injuries, Georgia State Patrol spokesperson Courtney Floyd said Wednesday. After landing upside down, the Nissan struck another car, then tumbled end over end before coming to a rest 23 feet down the roadway, the report said. Even before the car stops, the officer whose body cam recorded the crash begins sprinting to render aid to the stricken motorist. A Lowndes County Sheriff's deputy was hit by flying debris, but his injuries were not life-threatening. The tow truck, described as a rollback wrecker, was parked in the left lane with its emergency lights activated, the accident report said. Authorities had been on the scene responding to an earlier incident. Georgia State Patrol Lieutenant Crystal Zion told WSB-TV that the crash underscores the importance of Georgia's move-over law. Al Pacino, who is 83 years old, and 29-year-old Noor Al-Fallah are expecting a baby, the actor's representative confirmed Wednesday. Pacino's publicist Stan Rosenfeld verified the news first published by TMZ, but said there would be no statement at this time. The baby would be Pacino's fourth child. He has a 33-year-old daughter, Julie Mary, with acting coach Jan Tarrant, and 22-year-old twins Anton and Olivia, with actor Beverly D'Angelo. Pacino and Al-Fallah reportedly began dating last year. She describes herself as a raconteur on her Instagram page, and her IMDb page notes that she is a producer on 2 movies currently in post-production, including the Pacino starrer Billy Knight. Robert De Niro, at 79, becomes a father for the 7th time. Pacino's baby news follows close on the heels of longtime friend and fellow actor Robert De Niro's own. A representative for the 79-year-old actor confirmed earlier this month that De Niro had become a father for the 7th time, but few other details, including the identity of the mother, were released. Now it's time for global updates. a private space flight carrying a team of 2 Saudi and 2 American astronauts, including the first Arab woman sent into orbit, has splashed down safely in the Gulf of Mexico after a research mission on board the International Space Station. The SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule carrying the team parachuted into the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Panama City, Florida, on Tuesday night after a 12-hour re-entry flight after 10 days in orbit. The splashdown was carried live by a joint webcast presented by SpaceX and the company behind the mission, Axiom Space. The return to Earth concluded the second space station mission organized, equipped and trained entirely at private expense by Axiom, a 7-year-old Houston-based venture headed by NASA's former ISS program manager. The Axiom 2 crew was led by retired NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson, who holds the U.S. record for most time spent in orbit with 665 days in space over 3 long-duration missions to the ISS, including 10 spacewalks. She now serves as Axiom's Director of Human Spaceflight. That was a phenomenal ride. We really enjoyed all of it, Whitson radioed to mission controllers moments after splashdown. AX-2's designated pilot was John Schaffner, an aviator, race car driver, and investor from Alaska. Rounding out the crew as mission specialists were the first 2 astronauts from Saudi Arabia to fly on board a private spacecraft, Ali Al-Karni, a fighter pilot for the Royal Saudi Air Force, and Rayana Barnawi, a biomedical scientist in cancer stem cell research. Summer is in the air. Cigarette smoke is not. In Sweden's outdoor bars and restaurants, as the World Health Organization marks World No Tobacco Day on Wednesday, Sweden, which has the lowest rate of smoking in the European Union, is close to declaring itself smoke-free, defined as having fewer than 5% daily smokers in the population. Many experts give credit to decades of anti-smoking campaigns and legislation, while others point to the prevalence of snus, a smokeless tobacco product that is banned elsewhere in the EU but is marketed in Sweden as an alternative to cigarettes. Whatever the reason, the 5% milestone is now within reach. Only 6.4% of Swedish over 15 were daily smokers in 2019, the lowest in the EU and far below the average of 18.5% across the 27-nation bloc, according to the Eurostat Statistic Agency. Figures from the Public Health Agency of Sweden show the smoking rate has continued to fall since then, reaching 5.6% last year. China has blamed a U.S. provocation for an incident in which a Chinese plane crossed in front of an American surveillance aircraft over the South China Sea. The United States' long-term and frequent sending of ships and planes to conduct close surveillance on China seriously harms China's national sovereignty and security, Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said on Wednesday. This kind of provocative, dangerous activity is the cause of the security issues on the seas. China will continue to take all necessary steps to resolutely protect its own sovereignty and security, Mao said. The U.S. military said on Tuesday a Chinese fighter pilot performed an unnecessarily aggressive maneuver near an American surveillance aircraft operating over the South China Sea last week. Video footage released by the U.S. military shows a Chinese fighter jet crossing in front of the American aircraft, which can be seen shaking from the resulting turbulence. The Chinese plane flew directly in front of and within 400 feet of the nose of the RC-135, forcing the U.S. aircraft to fly through its wake turbulence on Friday, the Indo-Pacific Command said in a statement. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 14,887.14. The NYSE Composite is decreased by 107.50 points or 0.72%. Tokyo's stock close price is 30,887.88. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 440.28 points or 1.41%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,204.56. The Shanghai index is decreased by 19.65 points or 0.61%. Hong Kong stock close price is 18,234.27. The Hang Seng index is decreased by 361.51 points or 1.94%. Bombay stock close price is 62,622.24. The Sensex index is decreased by 346.89 points or 0.55%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. World number 2 Arina Sabalenka cruised into the French Open third round on Wednesday with a straight sets win over fellow Belarusian Irina Shimanovic. The Australian Open champion took some time to get the measure of her opponent, who had never won a main draw WTA match before this tournament, before wrapping up a 7-5, 6-2 victory. Sabalenka will face either Poland's Magdalena Frech or Russian Kamila Rakimova in the last 32. World number 1 Carlos Alcaraz overcame a second set blip to defeat Japan's Taro Daniel and reach the French Open last 32 on Wednesday. The Spanish star came through 6-1, 3-6, 6-1, 6-2 against his 112th ranked opponent and will face Canada's Denis Shapovalov for a place in the fourth round. Alcaraz is bidding to add the Roland Garros title to the US Open he won in 2022. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest update. Millennium TV US and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV, and also in all European countries and Australia, available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jago TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.